I want to talk about the weather. I want to talk about, and I have probably for, I would say probably 30 years now, if not longer, I have noticed correlation between the weather and our experience, right? As humans, because collectively the emotion creates, right? Like we know this. So there's times where we are influencing the weather and the other times are when the other weather is influencing us. And it's a back and forth experience. When the military and the governments all discovered that they could mess with that weather stuff, and China's been doing this for years and years and years. They are very open about their weather manipulations. They're totally open about it. They don't have no problem telling people. But you know, this back and forth stuff, when we need a lot of clearing and cleansing, stuff happens. You either get rain, snow, or fire, things like that, flooding, right? Things like that. All of that is very relative to our experience here on this planet. But what we see happening here, as you can see, they're bringing in the closure, they're bringing in the coastlines, eh? Have you noticed that the BC and the East Coast are all kind of, we know they're bringing us all together. They're colonizing, right? They're trying to colonize this.
On the 15th, there was a weather warning that went out, and I think there was tornadoes that touched down. I don't know if that was on the 15th or not, but there's a great big wide swath of destruction, which is wider than anybody's ever seen with a tornado. And then they're showing FEMA's coming in now and saying, if you want water, or you want any aid, you have to get the jab. So they're not bringing water in blankets, and they're bringing vaccines in. Like, who are these people who work for these organizations? Like, some of these bitches need to be shot. There's nothing else you can do with them. Like, there's no reaching them that they know when the right start and stop. And so when you're talking about the weather, so they were talking on the 15th, somebody, I can't remember whose site I was on, and he was showing the weather forecast and that there was a lot of wind coming in. And he said, basically, as it comes from California and comes all the way through, I think it was going to be Minnesota, where they knew that they were expecting snow nados, I think they're calling them. So you don't get a tornado when there's snow, but this is the manipulations of the weather. But is anybody even questioning that? Are they all calling it climate change? Like, it's like, wake up. You know what I mean? Like, it's getting dumber by the minute, right? And I don't want to be depressing today. You know, like we've talked about things. We know we've had a bad week. Anybody I've spoken with has felt energetic pressure. A lot of people are sleeping more. I even had a nap yesterday. I woke up 3 hours later. I slept for an hour on the couch, right? It's like, I don't do that. But what we're noticing is we're getting targeted through different means, whether it's just the weather, I don't know at this point in time, but I think it's a double-edged sword. I think there's machines, whether it's HARP or DARPA, that can manipulate the weather. And when you're talking about the coast coming closer together, have you seen the US Navy flood maps? Okay, I don't have one available on my computer, but I will show them to you at another time. But they know that they're dredging, like they're planning on taking the coast out. They're planning on being so much land is going to be underwater. They said the Mississippi River, they dredged it so the oil tankers could come up and down. They say there's submarines that are in the Mississippi, but it's also going to divide when the earthquakes come. So we might have eastern US as an island, a continent now of its own. So who knows, how far will these people go before they wake up? And it's the average person, the everyday person. Like I said, they're marking the grass out here. I think they're going to put in 5G. And when I asked the woman, what are you doing? And she said, Rogers ordered it. Well, there's nothing that's come in the mailbox from Rogers that they have the right to come onto our property. So why would Rogers do a whole subdivision? Because not everybody here is on Rogers. So why would they be the ones who are paying for this? And then a couple of years ago, it happened out on the street just down from me that Bell did it for everybody to put in 5G. And when I asked them, what are they doing? This fellow goes, oh, well, they're putting in 5G. If we do it now, Bell says it's free, but if we do it later, we have to pay $1,000. I'm like, does anybody have any standards for themselves? At what point do you not let people lie to you? Would you let your husband lie to you in your marriage? And when I say this, there might be little white lies. He's hiding a birthday party or a special event. Like, there might be little things you let go, but you wouldn't let the big lies that are going to impact your wellness go. Why would we allow this within the education system, the judicial system, the protective services, police services? We allow this in stores, as you're saying. You know, you're in the mall and they're checking vaccine passports for you to sit and eat a meal, but you can stand up and not have a passport. Like, when do these people, like, they're getting dumber by the minute. And the problem is they influence all of us, whether we know it or not. So their dense energy is bringing down the frequency. And what I do think was happening this week, a number of people were talking about feeling constipated. I think our root chakra, our sense of physical security is being threatened. So people are saying they're feeling constipated. And I know some people are taking magnesium and different things, just try to get their body, their bowels flowing again. But it's also the crown chakra, the connection to source. So on a good note, somebody just sent me something that showed a fellow with a tone generator. So not binaural beats, but a tone generator. And he had a light on his bed. I don't know what the light was for, but he sat there with his phone with his tone going off, and you're watching the light expand, like the glow from the light expand, and a portal opened. He goes, I know where that is. That's Sedona. So you could see the portal in the bedroom open. So this is when we remote view, when we go into another dimension and you know something, but you don't know why. So as the insanity is coming in, the neat things are coming in as well. But are most people going to be able to handle it? And people are telling me, one fellow was telling me he was driving home for about half an hour from his workplace to home. And he goes, and then I realized everything around me was like it was 20 years ago. So he wasn't sure if he went through a time warp or a portal. So, and he says when he got home, he came in the driveway, and it wasn't until he got to where he lives right there that all of a sudden he realized, okay, I'm back in the regular time spot now. So I'm hearing all kinds of interesting things are happening, but we should be embracing all these changes that are coming in, but you've got to always watch your back, because you don't know who's going to do something stupid in whatever the areas that they're attacking people, right? Crazy.
But that is so, and that, you know, I like that you brought that up about the constipation, because, you know, really, I've often expressed to people, you know, everything is related, right? Like everything manifests, as you know, into a thing. And so I always say to people, you know, people who have trouble dealing with shit have bowel issues, people, or constipation or whatever, things like that. Like it's very logical. Like it's just logical, you know. If I get pissed off a lot, I'll probably have bladder issues or kidney issues or stuff like that. Like seriously, that's very, very real and logical to me. The other thing you mentioned, which I know a lot of people are dealing with this kind of up and down stuff, but the other thing was the sleep. I've had, I don't know how many people this week that I've read for and spoken to in coaching calls who've actually said the same thing. I can't get enough sleep. I just cannot get enough sleep. I'm sleeping like long hours. I'm sleeping till late. They're not. And that's because not only is it good for our bodies to be in that space, but there's also a sense of recalibration, I think, that comes from that sleep.
Yes, I agree. Yes, totally. And our body is reclimatizing to the new energies that are coming in.
Yeah. Gives us a bit of a, and then you got to be careful though, because a little bit too much and you're bordering on depression. You know, where you don't want to get up, you don't want to face the world, you don't want to look at anything outside of the covers in your bedroom. Those kinds of things are also very real with people right now.
And I agree that they're real, and sometimes it's okay to feel them. And then ask yourself, why am I feeling I don't want to get out of bed today? What am I dreading today? And then maybe there's a logical explanation, or there's one thing you can do that will change the energy around you. Okay, I need more food, I need more water, whatever it is that you realize that there's something nagging at you maybe, or you feel you need to do something. So then go and do that one thing if it makes you feel good, even if it means going out and just going for a walk or spending time in sunshine, whatever it is, right? Because I've had the odd day like that. I don't have too many days like that, but when I have them, I'm like, why would I be dreading today? And then you look at it and say, no, it's just whatever. Maybe I saw something the day before in a video or something got me down. I just watched an 8-year-old boy get arrested for punching his teacher in the chest, and the cop put him in handcuffs. This is in Florida. Like, people are losing they're losing their standards, they're losing their morality, they're losing their sense of right and wrong. Everybody's got God complex, that they think they can run around and do whatever they want. So why didn't anybody ask that little boy, what did your teacher say to you that made you hit your teacher? Right? That's what I would be asking. What did that teacher say to you? What if the teacher asked that little boy for sex? Like, how do we know?
Because, you know, yeah, generally they're not like that, right? And if that's the case, there was a provoke, right? There was definitely something that provoked that. And it's got to be pretty strong, or the kid probably wouldn't have reacted like that. Even if you have these kids who are like way strong out or whatever, like they're not, and this is an 8-year-old. This is an 8-year-old. Did I show you last week the sheets that I have? They're like legal size sheets, and it shows all the different mental health drugs people are on. The first page and a half was all school shootings, different ages around the world, different years. I can't remember if it was like 2005 to 2014, but they're all on mental health drugs.
So now and I was talking to one of my clients whose husband's a teacher, and he says if any of the children act out, they go and they want to start writing out a request form that that child has a psych evaluation, that they want them on medication right away. Like these teachers, honest to God, we need to start either holding their feet to the fire or shooting some of them, because they're not going to stop. They don't understand where their rights start and stop. Another person told me, she works at a school. She sent me a picture and said, look, the COVID bus is back at the school. They're taking the kids when the parents aren't there and getting them to go to the bus to get the shot. Who has God complex that says this is where your rights, you have the right to do this to another human being who's not old enough to understand the consequences of this behavior? Right. So we've got a lot of things that are happening right now, and things are going to unravel. When I say things, I don't know what's going to unravel, but there's got to be a catalyst. If we aren't careful, these stupid people are they're going to be the ones who are pushing the lever on the toilet, and we're in the bowl going down, but they don't realize they're going to be going down too. But it's just insane.
So we're at a critical point. We're at a critical time. And as you're well aware, there's a full moon tomorrow. And the solstice is coming.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people like me, who've practiced pagan traditions and earth traditions for a very, very long time, like since I was in my teens, I have done quote unquote witchcraft and stuff like that. And really it's all about, it's just intention. Magic and divine magic is intention. And everything is done with a good intention, so it's not harmful, right?
But can you clarify that a little bit so that people understand what you're saying? So I get what you mean by witchcraft, but there's black magic and there's white magic, and sometimes it doesn't matter which one you're practicing. You can have a good intention for somebody, but it's none of your business. So my epiphany was last night was I'm trying to help people who don't want help. Who's crazy now? So that I have to realize that just because I want something doesn't mean everybody else wants the same thing, that I try to stay in my lane. So there is good and bad intention with the witchcraft, but like everything, the words have been manipulated for people to think it means that you're doing something dark or nefarious, and you're not.
So then I'm going to change that. And the only reason I use that term is because it does bring it together into a category, but I've always considered it just energy work. It's just energy work.
It is.
It's about, it's prayer magnified, it's prayer physically,
intention,
materially magnified, materially manifested. So, since I was like a teenager, I have followed pagan traditions and stuff like that. And what we need to really recognize is that every time we celebrate a full moon, or we all get our crystals out, put them in the moonlight and all of that stuff, and we're all like, yay, God, yay, creator, yay, source, yay, whatever, universe. There's a dark force, right? Everything is polarity. We live in a third dimensional experience that is third density and polar, completely polar. For every
polarized.
That's why, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, that's how we have to work here. We are in opposites and polar experience. So when we sit here staring at the light, like I said last time, staring at the light and doing all the stuff in the light, equally, they're in the dark and they're doing their stuff in the dark.
Yeah.
And the solstices, especially the solstices and the equinoxes, carry incredible power because they are planetarily experienced, right, by everybody, regardless. So, and even though, we have because Christmas is relative to what you believe, right? So Kwanzaa happens at a different time than Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a longer time than Christmas. All of that stuff, that's all man-made. That's all man-made. It's all meant to distract everybody. The idea is that the solstices and the equinoxes are the way we're supposed to keep our times. So for all these years, I've practiced, the return of the light for the solstice in December. But they know we do that. And they're working on bringing back the darkness and amplifying the darkness. And we have to keep in mind that we need to really bring that forward. The whole story of Jesus was meant to be a parable about, the birth of the light for the world, the birth of a new light for the world that is bringing hope and inspiration, all that stuff. And so it's important for us to acknowledge that, but we have to be very cognizant of the fact that for every action we create, they're actually working against us. They're counteracting all of it, and they're doing it in force, and they're counteracting in a way that is, they're hoping and anticipating that their counteraction is stronger than our actions.
It is, if they're evil, because evil is not a matter of ignorance. I'm going to use this because a lot of people say the psychopaths, oh, they can't feel. Yes, they do. They get off on causing you pain, and they get off on causing suffering. They don't feel love the way a person would normally feel love and look for those emotions like joy, happiness that make us feel good, or wanting to help and contribute, they get off on putting it to you and causing pain. And this is what the mental health people don't want anybody to know, because many of them are sociopaths and psychopaths, if you ask me. But they want everybody staying in the darkness. Exactly what you're saying. There is a man, Troy Smith, I think his name is Tory Smith. And I don't know what quite happened to him, if he was an adult and he was trying to expose the human trafficking in the underground bunkers. But he said they took him down to the bunker, and he said a few names like Pence and a few other people sodomized him. But when he's now talking about it, he asked for prayers. Within a month, he said, stop sending me prayers, because when you send me the light, the darkness comes and they harvest me. And I'm like, how do we not know that? So when everybody gets this kumbaya nonsense going about group intention and group prayer, you can draw the negative attention, because all of a sudden they see that light spark up. So where is that light? Go in and get it, right? Exactly what you're saying.
Cathedrals, all kinds of places. We spoke of this before. These are vortexes. These are feeding frenzy spaces for them. When we can get enough people in there to do that, they do. They come in there and they will literally feed off of that energy.
Look at Notre Dame. Do you remember the church that burned down? They said Michelle Obama was going to go there and do something. So whatever that is, I'm sure the public wouldn't know what it is, and it burned down. But if you look at Stonehenge in the Vatican and you draw a straight line, it comes through Notre Dame, which again, I would assume is a ley line that those different structures are on.
Is that not the Rose line? Or is that the Michael line? I think that might be the Michael Mary line, actually.
Michael and Mary is in Alberta, I think. The Michael and Mary turnstile.
You mean, oh, that's an energy vortex, right? So the Michael one is in Alberta by Lake Louise. That's a portal. Like it's actually an etheric retreat. Well, those of us who studied the ascended masters and archangels and all of that, and the Elohim, you know, we know that there are etheric retreats that take place. There are centers all around the world, and they are over some of the most empowering places ever. And I have to wonder to myself now if that's, you know, if that's not serving two purposes here. But I know that through France and all the way down, there's a line of energy called, it's like a ley line, that's called the Michael line, the Michael Mary line anyway. And there's points that line up all the way through Europe and all the way down into South America, or into like the lower European areas, and it basically lines up as a Michael line, which would be the Archangel Michael. But that's again a feeding point, right? All of these, and apparently the ley lines they've all been distorted and hijacked as well, right? So the natural grid to the planet has been.
So we don't know if that's still happening. I've heard different things that they're trying to change that. I suppose it was Atlantic, the time of Atlantis, when they did something with the crystal generators that they had down beneath it, and that they turn the energy backward. That's why everybody's spiraling to ruin themselves, because they, instead of spiraling up to be their best self, many people are spiraling down to ruin themselves, or cause themselves be demeaning toward themselves, or cause themselves excessive stress with whatever capacity. They don't understand what it means to be divinely human. When I use the word divinely, I mean to understand our innate abilities. You know, and like we're saying, you know, people dreaming now, I'm finding people are dreaming and they're telling me that they're having a conversation with their partner in the dream, and they get up and tell their partner about the dream, and the partner goes, I know, I was there. So the altered states of consciousness are coming in. Now you tell this to a mental health monkey who has nothing but the locality of the physical body, that's all they can understand, what they've been taught at school, they're going to label you as ill. And it's like, no, we're bringing this multidimensionality on. Right. So it's an interesting time, but when we start to understand all of these energies as well, you know, it came up when we were talking, set the intention not to be manipulated. Instead of trying to put it out there that we're going to save the world, set the intention that you see the truth, that we're not going to be manipulated by the dark forces. We're going to see their underhandedness or see their ill intentions as they're starting to put them out. Stu Peters was just on. I can't remember if it was Karen. What was her name? Sorry, Karen
Kingston.
Yeah, I think that's who
Kingston?
He was on with. And they were talking about holding these people accountable, and he's like, you will either do jail time or you will be executed if that's what's called for, if people are dying because of recommendations you're giving. This has to be across the board for everybody. right? But he's the first person that's not stuck
Absolutely.
on the head guy from the CDC. You know what I mean? Like people feed some of these guys their energy by talking about them all the time. And it's like, no, that little shit needs to rot somewhere, whether it's in a jail cell. There's no disputing it anymore. Do we really need a court to show the corruption and the lies and the manipulations that he's done? But we're feeding that kind of stuff. But when we set the intention not to be manipulated, to see the truth in ways we can handle it so we don't get truth bombed, I'm wondering if that keeps enough of us in a moderate light. Why I'm saying moderate light, that we're not drawing attention to ourselves, but we're still growing energetically, etherically, consciousness, growing our consciousness as we go through these things. So it's interesting, the number of us who are talking, like you're saying, you're talking to people and we're all getting the same thing about people wanting more sleep right now. But what's good about this, we're starting to see that there are things that we're going through, that we're all realizing we're not alone going through it. Different people are talking about it, depending on what groups you're listening to, that we're starting to see the symptoms that we're awakening to a higher possibility, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is happening more and more rapidly, which I think is great.
Yeah.
You a lot of people who are questioning that they and never questioned before, but things just really, it's one thing for this and it's another thing for that, but this, I don't know about this now. You know what I mean? Like that when you realize, though, this is what I love, because ultimately this is still working to the light's advantage, right? Because the more the dark forces and the evil ones push us, the more not only are we seeing them and exposing them and bringing that to light, but as we light up, we tip the scale, and the planetary ascension quotient of light actually lifts us up, right? So I kind of have to say that, as twisted as it is and distorted as it is and perverted as it is, that this is all really in service to the light. Like we're all here as light workers. Whether or not you're a light warrior is different, but I would say that because their actions are causing us to light up. If they didn't do what they're doing, most of us would still be just walking along, not taking, you know what I mean? People have said to me, I can't believe you're in this space now, like I'm sure, I know I've lost clients about this because they don't want me to not be love and light. They don't think that I'm not being, they don't think that I'm being love and light in this way, and here's the thing. You don't go running around the house yelling fire until the house is on fire. You don't freak people out, get them upset, and constantly focus on something that hasn't happened yet or that could happen and hasn't yet, in that way. Like, so if I'd have done that for the last 16 years of my business and just said, this, and this, and oh, by the way, the house could catch fire, so be prepared, people wouldn't, you know what I mean? They wouldn't have been able to process that. And now the house is on fire and I'm running around with my arms waving in the air like a man, like a mad woman, and they're all like, what's going on? Why are you being like that? Well, I don't know. You're about to burn your wrist. I don't know. Like,
I know.
Trying to save your ass. It's not a big problem. Like, and that's the point. You can't expect other people where they just don't have to give either. Right.
No.
And
that's what I'm talking about trying to help people who don't want help. Right. And doesn't mean you wish them ill or anything like that. Like you don't go into a dark energy and project onto them either. You just know when to walk away is what I'm finding. Right. And then we're looking at the weather manipulation. So somebody knows they're doing it. We look at the skies being peppered with different particles. Somebody's flying those planes. And what I'm finding difficult is we have an airport, a small airport near where I am. And when I say, isn't this strange, all these planes flying overhead? Yeah, but they've got a flight school. So they got planes flying from 8 in the morning till midnight because there's so many people trying to get their small plane pilot license. Like people just go into rote answers. Like they just go to stupid bills, as long as the first thing that pops into their head. And it's like, are you questioning anything? How many schools are around here? Flight schools are there at every small airport, whether it's Hamilton, whether it's Breslau, and all of these people are going to get their license because they all want to fly an airplane. Like it just doesn't add up. The stories. Who has that kind of money to take that kind of training, for 10 hours, 12 hours a day sometimes? But they just, I don't know. It's just, but all this is contributing to causing us strife. When I say strife, like in a way of it's annoying. Do you know what I mean? It's a hindrance. Some people could find it a strife, but hindrance is a better word for it, right? But all this stuff is just hindering us. So it's going to be interesting going forward. But how many people are going to say, "Oh my gosh," with this weather patterning that they're bringing in and destroying swaths of land? when are they going to clue in and say, this isn't normal? Or are they just going to call it climate change? Like, at what point do you say, wait a minute, why do we lack standards, and why are we so complacent with being in the dark? And this is part of what I don't get. Like, when you look at, so what was I listening to yesterday? The US Army, it was Risk Flex. She found an article, it was something from the US Army, that said that they can now take a group of people and teleport them. So they took them from somewhere in the US and sent them, including equipment, to Germany through teleportation. So this was years ago. It was brought out. So she went back and did she did a YouTube on it. And I'm sitting here going, so why are we so complacent with being stupid and dumbed down? Why don't we set standards that we want more? We want to see the truth. And I'm not coming from a place of greed. I'm coming from a place of, let's see what we're capable of. Let's expand ourselves and grow and really shine as human beings. But it's like, why aren't people angry that the military has this and won't share it with the people when we're the ones who pay the taxes and pay their salaries? Like, no standards for ourselves.
Why doesn't anybody want to ask them and question why they thought it was an appropriate time back in April of 2020 to implement propaganda measures? Like, why would they try to, let's just see how propaganda works on the Canadian citizens. It just happens to be in the middle of a pandemic. Oh, perfect timing. Let's see. Like, and nobody questions this.
I know.
What is the matter? Like,
And
honestly.
But I think that's what they're doing. They're seeing who will take the shot in the military to see who won't. And they're doing it right across the board in all the services we call service industry, because they're trying to get the ones who can think for themselves out so that they fill it with more order takers. That's all I can imagine, right?
An article about how they're creating artificial intelligence agencies, and companies are creating fake doctors, like artificial intelligence doctors to go like, oh, yeah, you know what? Mr. Droney guy, you Mr. Cyborg, you're not probing me for nothing, okay? I don't give a shit what you say. Like, you don't have anything. Cold steel is one thing, and that's, we all know as women what that's about, but you're not going to add to that, okay? It's interesting that you said that, because when we were talking about the coastlines, Casey talked about that. Edgar Casey actually talked about how California was going to be underwater, and so was New York. At one point was going to be underwater. These are places that are going to implode, I think, and I think a lot of it has to do with the dumbs. I really do.
Interesting. Because there's a lot of them in California.
In a certain way, so that what they do is basically destroy as many entranceway of we'll call them evidential entranceways. That's what I want to call that. Because if you can get into the dumbs in the system itself, then you can figure out what's really going on. But if they block you and they stop you from getting into where the actual hub is, you won't know. And I think that that's interesting. Seen a couple of really fascinating articles lately too about how it's quite probable that somebody was saying that the some of the stuff in the BC where the floods were coming through and things like that they were watching the military blow up bridges. Well, why would the military need to blow up bridges? Why? Like, bridges out, right, as far as I'm concerned, but they were actually seen. Somebody I know said she knows somebody who actually saw it, that they were detonating bombs and dynamite by the bridges and stuff. So we know that this it's all calculated. It's all part of the deal. And I think because the dark forces are desperate and evil is not winning. And evil, let's talk about this, people, because we talk about a polarity experience. You have to remember that as we work towards life, love, and all of those things, light, they're working towards backwards everything. Everything has been inverted, and that's the problem. So some of that has to do with a lot of people believe that into a phantom matrix through that sort of twisting of us, and that inversion is what we're all kind of caught in, and our job is to get back into our original plan, which is, of course, the ascension process. But we're caught in this phantom matrix. We're caught in the Anunnaki recycling center crap and all this other shit. And so it's really important for us to recognize that this polarity is playing out always, right? It's always playing out. So the idea, though, is that in this pulling us into this beautiful awareness space, we have to know that evil is just working against us in every turn and at every turn. Because if you even spell the word out, it's backwards, right? It's backwards live. The devil, they created the devil concept, but it's because they knew this would work, because it has to do with, backwards living. Evil is, and if you look at it, it's live backwards. Everything is the inversion. They played it very brilliantly, right? I mean, everywhere you look, you're like, oh, I see what you did there, oh, I see what you did there too. You messed with our language, you messed with this, you messed with that. It's been, and if you think about it, the diabolical nature of what's happening right now goes to show you the threat that we face as an intellectual species, right there. Because
You
if
think we're
they're this,
intellectual as a species?
yeah,
Do you think we are?
well, intellectually, like spiritually aware, I want to say is probably better, or spiritually intelligent. That's better. Spiritually intelligent, because that includes awareness and maturity. And what happens is, you know, they see that and it's a threat to them because they know we're winning. The God is winning, right? Like there's just no way around. This is not going to happen the way people think it's going to happen. So as bleak as it seems and all of that, this is a beautiful opportunity. And they really are just pushing everybody to come back to the light, serve the creator, serve the universe, whatever it is you need to do, but stand in that truth and that light, and don't be sucked into those depths of despair, right? Because that's all going to go. All that stuff's going to go. And when it goes, it's going to, in my opinion, from what I can gather, that phantom earth that we talked about is going to implode because there's going to be nothing left to hold it together. There's no light left to sustain its life, and it will actually implode and go home as what we call space dust return. And that's not ascension. That is a group of beings and a collective of beings and energy that has chosen a fate that they can't get out of now. There's no way out. They are doomed. They know it. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. And I feel kind of sorry for them sometimes, because I'm like, shit, you fucked that up big time. You know, like you thought you were going to get somewhere and you ain't. And now that's a karma thing. That's
I don't
karma.
feel sorry for them for that. I think they have to be held accountable and we all have to own our choices. So I don't feel empathy, but because there's too many people being hurt because of their nefarious agenda, right?
But
Do you know what's interesting? I was watching a video and it showed energy. I don't know if it was on the earth. I'm going to use the word plane without going into that concept, but what it showed was the energy above and below. And it was a twist of a DNA spiral, even in the planet. And then I wrote this, I pulled this out a while ago. I just want to read just just a paragraph. DNA was first discovered in 1860 by a Swiss chemist by the name of Johann Friedrich Miescher, I think is his last name. It was by experimenting with salt solution. So our cerebral spinal fluid is sea salt, one molecule away. So the salt is the key to this as well, which we've talked a bit about that. It was by experimenting with salt solutions on soiled bandages to understand what makes up white blood cells. That's the part of our immune system that he noticed when he added acid followed by alkali on the samples. He was able to separate a substance that had unexpected properties that were different from other proteins he was familiar with. Unbeknownst to him, he had discovered the molecular basis of all life, DNA. So even just by knowing DNA is what all this is about, you think of the 12 dimensions of consciousness, 12 strands, all kinds of correlations there, but knowing what we're aiming for, that we want to know how our DNA works. And we know why it's being manipulated right now, because they don't want us to know how our DNA works, right? And how we can access it and bring more of it on when it's appropriate as we go through this time. But I thought it was pretty interesting. He had discovered the molecular basis of all life, DNA. So universities are stupid, like education system goes out of their way to give people the wrong information about what is real.
Well, because those British scientists discovered DNA in the 50s, right? Francis Crick and whatever his name was, they were the ones apparently who brought DNA to the world or whatnot. But if this guy invented it before, discovered it rather before, then
1860.
Clearly they withheld that information for a reason.
So I'm going to just read the next paragraph because it ties into what you just said. It wasn't until 1953 that James Watson and Francis Crick were able to map out the structure of our DNA, and experimentation has been happening in many fields of science and spirituality ever since. It is known that the human body has 12 strands of DNA, and what is being rediscovered is that each of these strands communicates a level of consciousness intelligence. It is within the DNA that consciousness is communicated. And I like how you're talking about connecting to the light, source, God, whatever you call it. This is the consciousness, the awareness that we all have the ability to access.
Absolutely. And that's really important. Let's talk about that for a second, because those 10 strands of DNA that the dark forces clipped from us, right? They snipped our wings and they dropped us down. Those 10 strands, those first 2 strands that we run on now, this is our 2-dimensional, really. It's a 2-dimensional world or a 2-dimensional construct, but we live in the 3rd density of it as far as I can tell. So it is 3-dimensional. We have depth and width and height, obviously, or length and height and whatnot. But ultimately, there's just that we can work within, right? So those 10 strands, each layer is a dimensional space of knowledge. Yes. as we move up in a linear way, we can think of it, as we move up the chain or up the ladder to connect those DNA strands, we reclaim more and more of our universal knowledge and our innate divine understanding of who we are and our
Totally.
sovereign. I mean, that's beautiful when you think about it. I mean, they did a great job. Let's face it. If you're going to clip somebody's wings and make them stupid, they did exactly what they needed to do. They left us just enough to get by, just enough to function and to work as slaves.
Yeah.
The rest of it, certainly it was at their command. And that's why with this jab, they have constructed it so that it switches from a human reconnection DNA strand back into artificial. So they diverted it from your actual human DNA, and you are no longer, listen, you talk too about teleportation. All of those patents, by the way, can be found. They're all US patents, and they're at least 10 years old, some of those. They've discovered not just teleportation,
9,000.
but jet propulsion, things like that. Like all of this stuff is it is real. People think it's not, it's all in the movies. We really have every friggin' movie that people go, oh my God, wouldn't that be crazy if that was real? It's fucking real. Okay.
It's
just
real.
Go on with that. Take and chew back because it's real.
Can you
send me that?
I want to back what you've just said here. So this is about healing the immune system, and it's from a book called Spiritual, Energy Psychology. But you look at the monoatomic elements that are naturally made in our human bodies. So if you look at the yellow highlights, what the yellow highlights is what 3 doctors have found in the first 2 shots: aluminum, bismuth, bromine, cadmium, calcium, chlorine, chromium, copper, gold, iron, nickel, potassium, selenium, silica, and silver. So these were found in the first 2. So exactly what you just said. Other people are calling them monoatomic elements, but what they're trying to do is switch out what we naturally produce in our body with the synthetic one. It's exactly. So I'm just saying this to reinforce what you've just said with a different source of information than what you're quoting, just so that we can show people that the information is out there if we want to look for it.
Send me that, Sandy.
Yeah.
Can you send me that information? Yeah, because you know what, that's exactly what's happening. And I mean, when you realize that they put patents on these shots, right? All the ingredients and whatnot, and some of them have trade secrets, like the KFC one that you're not going to tell you what the ingredients are. That's fine.
Notice there's 11 secret ingredients. 11.
Right. Yeah, specifically, and this one has 7, right? The latest patent to come out for the latest jabs they've gone from 2 trade secrets in the beginning of the year to now 7 trade secrets. That's what Karen Kingston talks about, or was it James? Either one, but they're still telling the truth. And so the point is that with all of those things, especially, they're just literally converting us to synthetic everything. They want it. That's what the graphene is for. The graphene is so that when they shoot this 5G shit at you, it knows what to do with the information it's receiving, with the signals and frequencies, and that then transmits it throughout your body.
And then it gets you to do what it wants you to do instead of you being in control of your own mind, right? So that is, I know.
For years, right? Have implanted their soldiers, and some of them have friggin' self-destruct buttons, so that if they're doing what they don't want them to do, they just hit a button and these people drop dead. Like, we have to realize this stuff is real. The heart attack, the CIA in the 1960s, they devised this friggin' heart attack gun that could shoot this teeny little dart and hit you and cause you to have a heart attack that the coroner would then say was a natural cause heart attack.
Because they're not taught. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, don't tell me this shit isn't real. It's all real.
So you know what I've come up with as well recently? So we look at the heart chakra as the color green. You know this, I know you know this, but just for people who aren't familiar. So I just want to make the reference. So the heart chakra is also the chakra that bridges between the lower 3 and the upper 3 dimensions, which is our more the unseen universe that we have the consciousness abilities to create with our consciousness. But the myocarditis and pericarditis, it's after the hearts, because of the heart energy is the love energy that we put out there that we can manifest through, because our heart is our commander in chief. So when you're talking about this graphene, and I'm thinking of all these athletes that are just falling over, or anybody who's going out and getting any kind of an exercise or accelerating their heart rate, but that's what that was about. They know exactly it's the love energy that's going to bridge our higher self and our lower self, and they don't want that. So this is where they're going after the hearts. They're going after our souls. They're going after our very hearts. So they've thought of everything. And this is why these people need to swing from a rope
Listen,
because of
here.
crimes.
So it's not just the heart, Sandy, it's the lungs. This stuff attacks the lungs, right? So what do our lungs represent? Our ability to take in life. Our
Yes.
ability to breathe fully in the force of life itself. And they're hindering that, and they're shutting down our hearts so we can't love each other. You know, a long time ago, probably at the beginning of the year, maybe towards the end of I think it was the beginning of this year, I watched a round table, had Sasha Stone and Rocco Galletti, and it was a very odd mix of people because those two don't really go together, but whatever. It was a wonderful show. But one of the things I thought was really interesting was that, oh no, it was David Icke. Excuse me. It was David Icke, not Sasha Stone. It was David Icke and Rocco Galletti and a couple of others. And one of the things David Icke said that I thought was just phenomenal was he said, you know, stay in your 528. If you stay in the 528 frequency, they cannot touch you. And when you realize that it is all about frequency, if you can sing a song in you know, in a higher pitch, the dogs can't hear you, or they can hear you, nobody else can, kind of idea. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. When we work our light, we become a beacon. They see you. Don't think for a minute they're not watching for wherever they can feed off of light.
And then they go up and play whack-a-mole when you shine as the light. They come up and take you down. You know, it's interesting what you said about 528, that portal that opened that I was telling you about, the guy opened the portal in the bedroom with the tone generator. Guess what frequency he used? 525. 525. So it's really close to 528, but my point is there's going to be all kinds of information that comes out about the tones and the sound of the pitch as you're describing and what it can do. So 528 definitely is the love. So can we go just back up? You talked about the lungs. Let's talk about the purpose of our breath. One, to give us life, but it's also through our breath work when we're breathing in the love of creator or source and breathing out that love, that this is what connects us to spirit as well. So they're really going after
to us with, right? God breathed the air into us to bring us life. Right. We have to keep that in mind. And that's what they're blasphemy, right? It's like, fuck you, God. That's exactly what they're doing. We're going after the two things that you care about the most.
Yeah. So it's interesting when we're putting in just different context to things that we've kind of talked about a little bit in the past, but this is great that we're adding this information that people see the depth of the deception that we're up against. Because a lot of people had a bad week this week, just they did not feel good, or they felt, whether they felt nauseous, headaches, loss of hope, despair. There's a lot of different emotions had come up. We don't know if it's because they pipe frequency into us or whatever, but it's okay to acknowledge that we are going to go through these periods of time, but not to stay in it. And it's like you said, when you get up one morning and you want to just put the covers over your head and don't want to get out of bed, it's okay if that happens once in a while, but it can't happen all the time, because we have to understand what we're up against. And I think some of the most empowering things we can do, and we understand the nefarious agenda that some people have for the majority of humans, then it kind of raises our frequency up, even if it gets us to anger, or if it gets us even higher to courage. Yeah. Then we're at the 200 mark. You know what I mean? Then we start to stand up and just say, we're not taking this anymore. I think that was the last cue drop. We're not, Krista's sister, we're not taking, what's that song? We're not going to take it. Right. So this is part of all of the awareness, which is bringing information to the light as we're doing, and we're talking about this, but this information also helps us understand our multidimensionality, but understand the DNA is the key to all this. This is why they want to strip us and keep our DNA from reforming, or from the consciousness from collectively coming in and sharing the information that we all know. I always find it interesting to see how many people are saying the same thing at the same time, but they're not operating in the same circles. You know what I mean? Somebody will say something in a presentation over here and somebody else is maybe across the world and figuring this out. But this is how we're meant to communicate with each other, like the telepathy.
That's the collective consciousness. We have to get everything in the right space in the collective consciousness, because if you think of it like a yin yang, you've got a half here that's light and a half here that's dark, and each of them have their own portal to each other.
Yes.
Now then closed, the enclosure of that is our experience here. We're stuck in this friggin' thing. That's why when you said about them inverting it and turning things around, like the Kabbalah twisted the Kabbalah upside down so it goes into the ground, not up to God. They did that on purpose to absolutely invert our reality.
So this is interesting, because I follow a Black magician in the UK, and he says, so when you look at the Kabbalah, he says they flipped it this way. And you're saying it's this way. So he's a Black magician who created the New Age movement. I'm sure he's still lying to us. So we have to go through with the information that he shares and say, is he telling this the truth, or is he a pathological liar just because he is? and he's going to lie some more. That's really interesting. So Madonna did a Euro Israel concert where the song she sang was like a prayer. And if anybody has seen that video, she's coming down the stairs and she's not singing the way she normally would, but there's four people are carrying pillars, and at the end of it, they cross the pillars backwards. So they figure the rabbi supposedly fucked the New Age movement with all these MI5, MI6. So they figured she undid the spell. Now, I don't see her career taking off again, so whether it worked or not, I don't know. She also had people wearing the gas masks in that song. So there's who knows what the real answer is, but there's a lot of things that didn't make sense. But when we know to start watching for these things, so that is so interesting about the Kabbalah. I got to go have a look at that now, because Santos Bonacci uses the one where it's pointing down, and I wonder if I can turn it upside down, if I can see it in a different context. He's got cards on it, like tarot and all kinds of things.
Well, because it's also, remember, in my experience, I don't want to say remember because it's not everybody's memory, but there is a collective consciousness where there are pockets of all of our information up there, and that as long as we tap into it, we can be validated in that, right? Because that's how we work. That's really how we work. But that's interesting because I do believe it was not just flipped this way, but also twisted. Like everything has been twisted, perverted, and distorted. So any which way that they can do it, they're gonna do it, right? Like they took all our,
both.
Yeah. Well, they took all our symbols. Now, according to the freedom teachings of Ashiana Dean, who teaches the Guardian material, which is the Guardian Alliance material, I find her fascinating. This information is extremely complex. It talks about stargates and portals and how we ended up here and what really happened and who's who and what they did to us. And I mean, all the bloodline races like Luciferian and the Anunnaki and all that stuff, she brings it all together. Incredible information. Now, again, another thing where we take it with a grain of salt, and on some occasions, perhaps a shot of tequila on the odd day. I just can't fucking get any of this shit, right? Give me a drink. That's my thing. No, I'm just kidding. But the freedom
you're saying we got to be discerning. I get it. That's funny. That's funny what you said.
Yeah, it's not for, like, listen, I mean, some of the teachings that she has really resonate with me, but she was also, her information, or the information from the Guardian Alliance and the founders races, was enough to cause me a paradigm shatter. So, I mean, it's not even a shift. It's like, holy crap, what now? Because some of the information is like just so mind blowing that you're like, I don't even know where to go with that. Never mind whether I can discern for myself whether it's truth or not. I don't even know what to make of it. So some of that is very important to note. But in the Guardian teachings, they say that everything was not just inverted, but also the phantom matrix came about. And that's where we are. So that's where the twist comes in, right? It flips and then it twists. So that's where you get that with the Kabbalah. And that's where the Kabbalah comes from. They took all of those teachings, Freemasonry and all of this stuff. Like, we have to be really cognizant of this stuff, because most of the stuff you look at with Freemasonry, you'll see a lot of contrast. You'll see a lot of black and white. You see checkerboard, you see columns.
Totally. Look at that, police hats in Australia and the UK, blue and white or black and white.
Checkered, right? Bobbies and all that stuff. Absolutely. And that's the point. It's their little way of showing. I just saw a meme this morning about the new Meta logo, the Facebook Meta logo. And if you notice, all the people in this picture are all doing this. That's satanic. That's completely Luciferian.
But it's also the infinity symbol that they've altered as well. Yes.
They twisted it. Good luck with your time warp now. How's your infinity running now? And that's right. That's their deal. Tim Hortons here. Listen, when they did, I used to live up Tim Hortons. I've actually worked for Tim Hortons many, many years ago. I worked for Tim Hortons. And it blows my mind, but this is a company that has now decided, they were one of the first ones to implement the Vax Pass. So you can sit down and have a coffee and donut, but you had to show your shit for it. I mean, it just blew me away. And at that point I was like, I'll never buy anything from you. No drive-through, nothing. I don't give a shit. Nothing ever again. And recently I noticed that they came out with Tim Bieber. What do they call it? Timbits, or like the Timbits are now their Biebers. So Justin Bieber put this out there. And doesn't he do this while he's doing their little advertisement? I'm like, it's everywhere. They are so
it's interesting. I'd like to see Ashiana Dean stuff, because you know what I like about what you said. Some things you're not it's too much. but it doesn't mean it's not going to be too much in 6 months' time as you expand your knowledge, and all of a sudden you go back and you've got more information so that you can conceptualize what something is said when you didn't have the context for it. I've also got a page, I got to go and find it, where somebody has written where all the real symbols are. And I use my discernment when this person shares information, but she says, no, these are the real symbols. This is what they've hijacked. And she did not offer it in a slide format, so I had to capture it with my phone on her video, on her presentation. But I'm going to go and see if I can find that and look at those. We're not ready for them yet. When I say that, who am I to say we? I know it's not time, but when the time comes, it's good to have a context that we can say, no, we're not going to go for these symbols. We're going to maybe look at these ones now. So we are going to rebuild ourselves up consciously, energetically, innately, all the levels of DNA to what we can. But this is fantastic information that we're sharing today.
It is. And I do encourage people to look into this, to all the information that's out there, because you're going to find, again, in a linear sort of way, but let's face it, dimensions work this way anyway, right? Everything is about expansion. So you're going to start here and you're going to get bigger, like a nesting doll kind of concept. But ultimately, this information is, kind of like out here, like we learn here, and then we start to move into the whole, okay, it's a bit more galactic than we thought. And then we move into this. And when we get into this kind of information, especially with the founders' teachings or what are called the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald or Covenant teachings, you start to understand in a much more, not even galactic, we're talking universal way here, what's going on, where we are and what we're a part of, because we are just a speck. This whole planet and our old 7 or 8 billion people on it that everybody's all freaking out about. By the way, there's plenty of space on the planet, just so you know.
Totally.
Lots of places that haven't been discovered yet, so there's plenty of room for everybody. But that's okay. You eugenics people will just do something to take care of that.
If they would just do it on themselves. Like, I'm watching a professor talk about eugenics, and that we can go back and change our history. We can go in the future and change our history in the past. It's like, do it to yourself. Who says you have the right to do it to everybody else, or everybody else wants your stuff? So it's like the black forces are trying to do the same thing as sometimes the good forces, when we should be, staying in our lane a little more, is what I'm definitely getting. What's interesting, what you just made me think of is, I've seen a sheet, I've got this printed off somewhere too, and it shows all the different stargates. There's one over Iraq and Iran. I think it's over Iraq. That's what that war was about, as much as controlling that stargate. I think it's stargate number 8, as it is about oil or weapons of mass destruction, or whatever they called it, right? It was about the skies.
Absolutely. And actually, and that's important, because you'll hear Iraq talked about a lot right now. First of all, in the Bible, Iraq was one of the first nations to be, I believe, conquered. Was
that Babylon?
Well, yeah, right. It's the old Babylon, Persia, right? Is that? And so what we have to recognize there is that a lot of biblical stuff took place there, and that Iraq is actually going to be one of the first redeemed, which I think is fascinating, because what people talk about when they talk about the revaluing of the currency and stuff, they all say the same thing: Iraq has to be first. Well, that's because it's biblical. That's because that shit has to be undone. And when we know that shit's undone, the rest will come undone.
Yes.
And that's
and
how
that gives us hope. Yes. Isn't it interesting? I think it was Mark Atwood and Alex Collier, and Alex said that the dinar has been priced at $4 and some odd cents in Iraq, but $11 US and change outside of Iraq, compared to $100, I think it was. So they're trying to bring the value of this up. And there's some people who are going to lose their mind and think that they're going to lose something because Iraq gained something. And it's like, no, we got to bring everybody up who wants to come up, so I'm happy for them to hear that.
And you know what, again, it depends on the level of reality you want to live in, right? Okay, because if you are, from what I understand, we are to incorporate our 5th dimensional consciousness into our 3rd dimensional life, right? Yes. That's what I understand this is. That we actually bring this and ground it here and anchor it on this planet so that she can eventually ascend herself. Now, currency is actually a part of that 3rd dimensional experience. So ultimately, I mean, when I move into my 5th dimensional, there's no money. There's no such thing as money. There's no need for money, because just like Alex's Andromedan said, why do you have to pay to live on a planet you were born on? Like, no shit, Sherlock. Why do we? Why do I have to pay this much for a house? Why do I have to have this? Why? I don't mind paying for services and things like that. People need to make a in exchange, they have to have stuff, but we don't need to have an actual currency. That's part of the deception, right? That currency is the currency that we're sitting on, that is actually where our citizenship is docked. So they've got a hold of us, right? They've got us anchored on their damn sea here, and we just need to get the fuck off the boat, as far as I'm concerned. Like, get out.
It's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take a bit of time. So it's not going to be that currency's gone totally, but we have to be able to help the countries that don't have as much build up their, I don't want to say their net worth, which again, our value now is based on money, but they have to build up their ability to not be in poverty so that they don't get exploited.
Well, okay, so and their resources need to be reclaimed for themselves. Okay,
Yes.
and Africa in itself, the continent of Africa is one of the richest, it's probably the richest resource continent on the whole planet. And they have been so impoverished their whole lives. People are dying for diamonds, for God's sakes. It's insane when you think about it, but that's how distorted it is, right? Like, we can get vaccinated, like Alex said, but you can't feed everybody. Like, what the hell?
I know, he made some really good points with that, right? So this is why we're getting reevaluation, and I think it's a good thing, providing it doesn't just open another pathway to greed, and I don't think it is. And I think a lot of the darkness we're seeing right now is because we have to see it all, so it does not get recreated when we move forward, right?
Every bit of it, every ugly, disgusting, deplorable, diabolical bit of it. And people don't want to know. They don't want to know that children are being hunted and killed and eaten. Nobody wants to know that. Who the hell would want to know that? Especially people like us, who have huge hearts and whatever else, like parents or other. Nobody wants to know that stuff is going on.
What? But it's even worse. I think it was Charlie Ward one time said that, people aren't ready to wake up and realize how much of McDonald's food is human. The meat is human. He goes, the world's not ready for that. And I'm like, imagine if you're the 80% that compromise is made of the meat. Imagine how you feel about it. Too bad other people don't want to fucking know. That's why we're in this position, because they pretend they're stupid, and they're not stupid. And maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them are just, if I just turn a blind eye, I'll just mind my own business and I'll get ahead. Well, that's coming at the cost of somebody else energetically. It's coming at all of our cost, because it hurts us, it hurts the planet, it hurts everything, knowing this is happening. And this is why they want us out of, they don't want us healthy enough to spot their, I don't want to call it evil, although it is, but they don't want us to see their games. They don't want us to see how they really energize themselves at the children's expense or other people's expense, right?
And the more that they can pump us full of anything and everything synthetic, the less human we are, right? The less prone we are to the empathetic responses we would have normally and things like that. Yeah. I mean, I'm dumbfounded at the amount of people who have turned on their own families because the government told them to, turned on love because the government told them to. And all I could think of is, well, I hope you change out your speed dial numbers to the government line, because when you need their help, you best be calling them now, not the other people, because that's where you're at. But again, this is a beautiful, beautiful irony. Like, the irony is incredible here. This beautiful, what is it, a paradox, they say, right? Where everything is just like so full of meaning. It's amazing.
It is, and good and bad, but this is good. I hope we finish off on a positive note, because you mentioned a word earlier when we were talking before you started recording, is gratitude. And sometimes it's hard to feel grateful for things, but it's a great exercise to pull yourself out of a funk if that's what you're in. So there's all kinds of things you can do. Like, I get together with women once a week for a couple hours, and we just chit chat. So it's fantastic. Like, there's things that we can do, but be grateful. What are you grateful for? I'm grateful for the beautiful planet we live on. I'm grateful for the sunshine. I'm grateful for the fresh air, even though there might be some things happening with the air, but can we purify it with our own consciousness? I'm grateful for the possibility that we're coming through some darkness so that we can get to the light. Like, there's so many things that we can be grateful for. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for so many people.
Yeah, so much to be grateful for. Like, and I'm doing a radio show later, and we're going to be talking about the self-empowerment part, because that's what this is all about. This whole COVID thing, this whole pandemic is really, in a diabolically brilliant way, helping people become self-empowered. It's helping them conquer issues of trust and self-worth. What are you worth? Right? All of that. It's a beautiful, it's a twisted irony. Again, it's twisted.
Totally.
What if the plan all along? What if the plan was all along that these bastards be the worst bastards we've ever seen and try to take this planet down in order for us to wake up? We've been sleeping for so long. When the hell are you getting out of bed? Don't you hate that? When it's like 11 o'clock, you're like, what the fuck are you sleeping for? You know, get up. I feel like,
And you know what's crazy? Cleaning. I've been cleaning my garage. I've been cleaning out my cupboards. I've been cleaning out a secretary I have. I've been cleaning out closets. I've been cleaning out bathrooms. And I'm like, why did I hang on to all this stuff? And you know, maybe it's not a lot of stuff that I'm getting rid of. I'm getting rid of old clothes that I don't wear anymore or never did. But you just start realizing that there's always something you can do, because then you're purging denser energies, if you want to call it that way, right? So I honestly don't think that the darkness is here for us to wake up. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong, because my understanding, there's a lot of other planets out there that did allow the AI to take over, and we're one of the few that haven't allowed that to happen. So, and I'm not saying it's not partly true, but I think there's more that's going to come out in the future as to why the darkness is here.
And I think that's actually kind of, that's what makes this such a beautiful experience that nobody's ever done before. No planet, no system, nothing, no human or no species has ever accomplished this before, because, you know, that's happened. They've taken over
the AI in. Yeah.
One of the things I said recently to somebody in a reading, and gratefully, I'm thankful, I said, you know, okay, you guys, that's really good. Can you just hold that nugget so I can remember it? Because I never remember hardly anything from people's readings, because I'm not meant to. You don't ask them how the liquid was, you just know that it flowed through, right? One of the things I said was, because even my guy was like, it is gold, you got to use that, you know? You use it. But basically was, what good is being the light if you're not here to illuminate the darkness?
Yeah.
What is being light?
And they're doing both. Yes, totally. And that's a great point. So even if people are feeling down a little bit, these energies could be contributing to it. We don't know if darkness is coming out of the earth. We don't know what is all the source of all of it, but we are going to get through this.
I'm going to leave you with this before we finish this off, but this is something really important, because again, we have been red pilled for many, many years, all the way along. And I can't watch anything on TV anymore. I cannot watch anything on TV anymore without getting so upset about everything, because I'm like, oh my God, but I said to my husband, they're all actors. So they're just doing what they do. You don't know who they really are. They're just always acting. So that's, you know, it's important for us to keep that in mind. But one thing that keeps coming back to me is, even though they infiltrated it and they caused their own little bullshit in there, and we were all, you know, unfortunately manipulated there, the Flintstones of all things for them to actually infiltrate, right? And they did, right? The Masons were in there, the Grand Poobahs, all of that stuff. They were showing us what's, you know, right into the cartoon. But this was really awesome, because it keeps coming back to me. Pebbles and Bam Bam used to sing a song, Let the Sun Shine In. And one of the things was, you know, one of the lines is, you know, the devil will be unhappy if I never wear a frown. So that's the point. They're telling you, keep your vibration up, and we can't touch you. We won't be happy with you, but we can't touch you either. And that's what David Icke said. Keep your 528. They can't touch you. They can't even see you in that frequency, because they're so low in the lower densities, they can't pick it up. It's like being on, you know, an AM dial and trying to hear something on the FM line. You're just not going to get there. Totally different frequency bands, right? So that's what we've got to keep in mind. Stay up there. And if at the very least, you have to do it by gloating that you're shining your light bright and they're not, then do it.
Then do it. And that builds up your self-confidence when you know you are the light. And that really helps with the self-confidence, the self-worth, all of those things, right? Write out 3 things you're great at that you know about yourself, and then look in the mirror and say it to yourself. Build up your confidence if it's waning a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right?
We are incredible beings, and we're here to save ourselves. We're not in saving ourselves. We save the planet. We have to save it. Nobody's coming to save us. We are here to save ourselves, and we can only do it by being the example. The I am that I am is what I'm here for. And I've told people for many years, you don't go home at the end of your day and tell God all the stuff you did for everybody else. God doesn't give a crap about that. God's got them doing their own shit their way. You came to do a certain amount of stuff for yourself, and that's what you're responsible for. The I that is able to respond to my stuff only. And that's important. So talk about, do for yourself. You know, that's the whole, and we'll talk about this another time, because I'll tell you, this is a whole conversation in itself, but the service to self and the service to others bullshit. I'm so tired of people fighting with me about that. Let me tell you something. Service to self is service to others.
You know
period.
what? And I agree. And most people I work with, they underesteem themselves and they're always giving to everybody else. And there could be reasons, maybe they're missing the first 6 planets in their zodiac, you know, based on where the the sun sign is, whatever it is, but totally. So I always say be at least 51% to yourself, at least 51. And people look at me because we're all taught to be service to everybody else. They just want you giving your power away.
Well, and the thing is though, if you show people that it's okay to empower yourself, that what it looks like to do it and how good it feels for them, they're going to want to do it too. And the more people you get honoring themselves in that light, the more we all do it. It kind of gives them permission, right? Because then they think, oh, well, if a good person like that's doing it, then I can do it too, because they're a good person and they're doing it.
I think we know what we're going to talk about next time.
Where do we find you, Sandy? Where do we find you?
You can find me at endinggloballoneliness.com or email me at sandy@endinggloballoneliness.com. And I'm going to put our contact information in the description box.
Beautiful.
Just so that people can go in and just have a look, and I'm going to have you include more. You've given me your website, but maybe you're on different social media as well that people can find you there. And yeah, let's keep our vibration up, do the best we can. Understand we don't have to like every day the way it comes to us, but we can just look at it and see what we can do to make things better, what we can change energy, or do we just need to stay in it for a bit to figure out if there's a lesson there that we're meant to, an aha moment or something that we're meant to pick up on. So just trust ourselves, right?
Absolutely. Trust is imperative. We have to trust. And that's, see how they've done that, right? That's why we have trust and self-worth issues. That's part of the plan to bring us back. I really do believe it's this kind of, I don't know. I think they're actually on our side.
There you go. It's like an eagle diving down, right? And then it comes back up. And so that's where we're headed. We're headed through that curve to come back up. That's what I think too.
I agree.
So, okay.
I wish you the best. Stay grounded, stay hydrated, stay aware.
Totally. And have fun. I'm going to have fun this weekend too. It's not just all about working and things like that.
No.
So, and are you
shine bright?
And because it's a full moon, if it gets crazy, just understand it might not be you. Ask if the energy is yours or not, because the full moons can really mess with people's psyche and their emotions and all kinds of things.
Another call in itself, right? Because the moon isn't even what we think it is, and they manipulate those energies. That's why it is the way it is, and that's where it wasn't. I was here. It was trucked into this universe, into the solar system a long time ago. I know, because it took. So that's a whole different thing. But that's again part of the manipulation, and we have to learn to work. Right? We have to learn to work it to our advantage, not theirs.
Yes. So where can people find you, Brenda?
You can find me at brendathine.com. You can email me at brendathine@gmail.com, or you can find me in about 12 and a half hours out of Facebook jail and back on the platform for however long. I don't know how many times I've been there. But you know what, we'll try and keep it subdued a little bit because they really don't like me. But I'm still lucky enough to have a page, so you can find me there. You can also find me under Connections Resource Center Facebook page as well. That's my business page. And I'm on Telegram and gab.com, and yeah, just find me there. Instagram even, yeah, you can find me there. Just look fine. I'm there. T-I-N-E, fine. To thine own self.
I know, I love that. Okay. God bless. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, everyone. Take care. Bye, Sandy, honey.
Bye-bye.